Next, new module, that is compass surveying. Okay. So we'll start with the introduction of that. So as I have explained to you, all the kinds of surveys cannot be performed using tape and chain. Whenever we go for larger area surveys, we require high accuracy instruments like angle measuring instrument or level measuring instrument. Those all we need to use there, correct? So for the measurement of angles or for the measurement of directions of the survey lines, we will be using compass. So you can see on your screen the instruments for the direct measurement of the directions. So here they are calling it as measurement of directions instead of measurement of angles. Why? So all the survey lines, whatever survey lines you measure, okay, all the survey lines, the angle of separation of the survey lines will be given with respect to some meridians, with respect to some magnetic pole, that is north and south magnetic pole of the earth. That is why we call it as measurement of directions of the survey line instead of the angle. So how to measure those directions we will study in the next section. So now see here, instruments for the direct measurement of directions. We use surveyor's compass and prismatic compass for the direct measurement of directions. Instruments for measurement of angles, we will be using sextant and theodolite. Sextant and theodolite. So about theodolite, you will be studying in the next module. Now, for the measurement of directions, we will study about surveyor compass and prismatic compass. Okay. So I have also explained in the previous class about traverse surveying. So traversing is that type of survey in which a number of connected survey lines form the framework, and directions and the lengths of those survey lines are measured with the help of an angle measuring instrument or tape respectively. So basic definitions in the previous class I have explained. A number of connected survey lines form a framework. So about traverse survey in the previous class I have told you, again we have two types of traverse. One is open traverse and one more is closed traverse. So open traverse is from the start, once you start the surveying from the starting line, if your survey ends at the starting point, that will give you a closed traverse. If it does not end at the starting point, it is called as open traverse, correct? So that is about traverse surveying. So now for traverse surveying we will be using the angle measuring instrument. It may be surveyor compass, prismatic compass or theodolite. Okay. So what are the units we use for the measurement of angles? So units of angle measurement. So we have different types of systems to measure the directions or to measure the angles. So first system we all are familiar with, that is a sexagesimal system, where one circumference, that is one full circle, one circumference is 360 degrees. One circumference is 360 degrees. 1 degree is 60 minutes. So see here how to write the degree, how to write the minute. Okay. And next, 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. In sexagesimal system we will be measuring the angles or we will be measuring the directions in terms of degree, minutes and seconds. Degree, minutes and seconds. So we can represent it as 30 degree, 20 minutes, 20 seconds, like that. Okay. So sexagesimal system is the reference for the sexagesimal system is a circumference, that is a circle, correct? A circumference is the reference for sexagesimal system. One circumference is 360 degrees and 1 degree is 60 minutes. 1 minute is 60 seconds in sexagesimal system. So for in the compass we will be using this system only, sexagesimal system, where we will be measuring the direction and angles with respect to degree, minutes and seconds. Okay, so other two systems we will just have the introduction about them. Centesimal system, where one circumference is 400 grades and one grade is 100 centigrade and one centigrade is 100 centigrades. This is about centesimal system. So next, our system, where one full circumference is 24 hours. One full circumference is 24 hours. For example for our system is the wall clock which we have. One full circumference is 24 hours. 1 hour is 60 minutes and 1 minute is 60 seconds. So if I need to measure the directions or angles in our system, I will be indicating it in terms of hours, minutes and seconds. Correct? In sexagesimal system, degree, minutes and seconds. So in compass surveying, we will be using the sexagesimal system, where the angles or directions of the survey lines will be measured in terms of degree, seconds, degree, minutes and seconds. Okay. Next. So bearings and angles. So what are the bearings and what are the angles, and how do we measure it by using the compass? Okay. You can see on your screen now, the direction of a survey line can be either established with relation to each other or with relation to any meridian. So if the direction of
Bro,
survey
screen is
lines,
blank, bro.
what?
Screen is blank, bro.
Wait,
No, sir, screen is visible.
screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
It is visible, right? Okay, so bearings and angles. So uh, for for what measurement we call a bearing, and for what measurement we call it as angles. First, that basic idea we will get. Then we will go for how to measure the bearings and how to measure the angles. Okay, so the direction of any survey line can either be established by using two conditions. One is with relation to each other. So if you have two survey lines and if you are establishing the direction of those two survey lines, okay, that will give you the angle between two survey lines, that is called as angle. So whenever you establish or you measure the direction of survey lines with respect to any other survey line, that will give you the angle. Suppose if you have line AB and you will have line BC from the same common point B, okay, you will be measuring the direction of AB and BC from the same common point. Then the separation between those two lines will give you angles, not the bearing. Okay, so angle is the direction of survey line with relation to each other, with relation to each other. Okay, so one more we have, the direction of the survey lines can be established with relation to any meridian, with relation to any meridian. Meridian is the permanent magnetic pole with respect to the earth's quadrants. Okay, so with respect to that meridian, if you express the direction or angle of the survey line, that is called as bearing. Bearing is the direction of the survey line with relation to any meridian, that is B. So A is the definition for the angle where the direction of survey line is with relation to each other. B is the definition for bearing where the direction of survey line is with relation to any meridian. Clear? So I hope it is clear. I have made it clear. Bearing and angles. So if you have any doubt, you can ask. Bearings and angles. So bearing of a survey line is the direction of the survey line measured with relation to any meridian. Angle of a survey line is the direction of the survey line established with relation to each other. Correct? Okay. Now we'll study how to measure the bearing of a survey line. Bearing of a survey line. So whenever we have the larger area to survey, so we cannot go on measuring the angles. You cannot go on measuring the angles. Why? because if you have say 100 number of survey lines, so if you go on establishing the angles between the survey lines, what happens, that will be clumsy. Okay, so from the 100th line, what will be this angle of separation of the first line? To calculate that one, that will be difficult for you, right? So if I perform a compass survey using the bearing system, where the direction of every survey line will be expressed in terms of some meridian. So suppose if I take north and south direction, or east and west direction as the meridian of the earth, okay, so I will be indicating the direction of all the survey lines with respect to that meridian. All 100 survey lines, say if we're going for 100 survey lines, all the 100 survey lines directions will be expressed in terms of single meridian. So that will help you to establish relation between from one survey line to other survey line easily. So you can establish the relation between 100 survey line to 50th survey line, or 50th to 75th, 60th, any number of survey line to any number of survey line. You can establish the relation very easily if you have the single point of reference, that is meridian. The direction will be expressed in terms of meridian. So that will help you to establish the relation between any line. Okay, so bearing of a line is its direction relative to any meridian. So a meridian is any direction such as true meridian, magnetic meridian, and arbitrary meridian. So if you measure the bearing with respect to true meridian, it is called as true bearing. If you measure the bearing with respect to magnetic meridian, it is called as magnetic bearing. So if you measure with respect to arbitrary meridian, it is called as arbitrary bearing. So here in compass surveying, we will be measuring all the bearings of the survey lines in terms of magnetic meridian. So we will study the definition first. True meridian through a point is the line in which a plane passing that point and the north and south poles intersects with surface of the earth. The direction of true meridian through a point can be established by astronomical observation. True meridian is exactly two halves of the earth. In the previous class, I have shown you the figure where the earth, which is in spherical manner, we have exactly divided into two parts, north and south. Okay, so that is called as true meridian. Magnetic, yes, any doubt? Magnetic meridian is the meridian where magnetic meridian through a point is the direction shown by freely floating and balanced magnetic needle, free from all other attractive forces. Freely floating magnetic needle will indicate which directions. Anybody can tell? The magnetic needle or the magnet, the magnet, always the magnet will be aligned in which directions? Anybody can tell? Magnetic needle will be always showing, always aligned in north and south magnetic directions of the earth. So true north and south will be exactly two halves of the earth, but due to the magnetic forces of the earth, the true meridian is tilted somewhat because of the magnetic forces of the earth, that we call it as magnetic meridian. So magnetic meridian, we can define it as, it is the direction shown by a freely floating and balanced magnetic needle. Okay, so whenever we measure the directions by using magnetic meridian, it is called as magnetic bearing. Okay. Third one, arbitrary meridian is the any convenient direction towards a permanent or prominent mark or signal. It is the temporary meridian with respect to which we measure the bearings of a surveillance, such as a church spire, okay, the top of the church, or top of a chimney, that we will, along that direction we will be establishing the meridian, that is the temporary meridian with respect to which we will be measuring the bearing of a survey line. So whenever I measure the bearings of the survey lines with respect to true meridian, it is called as true bearing. Magnetic meridian, it is called as magnetic bearing. And if I measure The bearings with respect to arbitrary meridian, it is called as arbitrary bearing. Okay. So in compass surveying, we will be measuring the bearings by using a free floating magnetic needle which is established in the compass. We will be measuring the bearings of a survey line by using free floating and balanced magnetic needle. Okay, so that is why we call it as magnetic bearing. In compass surveying, we will be using magnetic bearing. So designation of bearings. So again in bearings we have different types. That is whole circle bearing and the quadrantal bearing. Whole circle bearing we also call it as azimuthal system. The quadrantal bearing we also call it as reduced bearing system. Okay, so how to measure the bearings by using the compass? So in bearings we have two types. One is the whole circle bearing and one more is the quadrantal bearing system. So first one we will study the whole circle bearing system. So in this system, the bearing of a line measured with the magnetic north or south in clockwise direction, the value of bearing thus varies from 0 degree to 360 degrees. That is the sexagesimal system where one circumference is total 360 degrees. In whole circle bearing system, we will be always measuring the bearing of the survey line in clockwise direction, that is from north to south in clockwise direction, and the value of the bearing varies from 0 degree to 360 degrees. It may be 0 degree, 1 degree, 2 degree, 10 degrees, 50 degrees. Okay, it varies from 0 to 360 degrees. Okay, so the whole circle bearing system, we will be using this system in prismatic compass. Prismatic compass is graduated on this system. That means in prismatic compass, the image which I have shown you in the previous class, the circle where the compass, where the magnetic needle is mounted. Okay, in that prismatic compass, we have the value of bearings varying from 0 degree to 360 degrees in one circumference. Okay, so they have given you one example here for whole circle bearing. Check the figure. The left one, WCB system, whole circle bearing. Okay, whole circle bearing. So I have a line AB, AC, AD, AF. Okay, the whole circle bearing of a line AB is theta 1. How? The whole circle bearing of any survey line is measured in clockwise direction from north to south. Theta 1 measured in a clockwise direction from north to south. See here, north, south, east, west quadrants I have drawn. Okay, the line AB is in first quadrant, that is northeast quadrant. The bearing of line AB measured from north to south in clockwise direction. You can see the bearing of all the lines AB, AC, AD, and AF are measured in clockwise direction like this. You can see the arrow. AB is theta 1. The bearing of line AC is theta 2, theta 3 for AD, and theta 4 for AF. Always the whole circle bearing of any survey line is measured in clockwise direction from north to south. Clear? Any doubts in that? How to measure the bearing of a whole circle bearing of any line? Any doubts in that? The whole circle bearing of any line is measured in clockwise direction from north to south. Always keep that in mind. Now the second one, quadrantal bearing system. So this figure 5.2. In quadrantal bearing system, see here, read it. In this system, the bearing of a line is measured eastward or westward from north or south. Eastward or westward from north or south. So in whole circle bearing, it is always clockwise measurement. So here in quadrantal bearing system, what they're telling, eastward or westward with respect to north and south. Correct. So for example, line AB, line AB. So the bearing, quadrantal bearing of this line is alpha here, correct? So how we have to write the quadrantal bearing of line AB is eastward or westward from north or south, correct? So how to write alpha here for AB is north n, north alpha east, right? You can see here. So referring to figure 5.2, the bearing of line AB is alpha written, correct? So you have to write it as north alpha east, eastward or westward from north and south, that is towards eastward from north, north alpha east. So how will we write the bearing of line AC? Always see here in quadrantal bearing system, if you are expressing from north to east, it is clockwise. If you are expressing it is from south to east, it is anti-clockwise. So it may be clockwise or anti-clockwise in quadrantal bearing system, but in whole circle bearing system it has to be measured always in clockwise direction, correct? So for line AC, the bearing will be beta, but how I will express it here? South beta east. See here, south beta east I am highlighting, correct? So for line AD it is south theta west. For line AF it is north phi west, correct? So always north or south shall be the first letter, and next will be the bearing. It may be alpha, beta, theta or phi, and next will be, it will be towards eastward or westward, that you have to write it here. How to write the quadrantal bearing system is towards eastward or westward from north or south, correct? Understood? Any doubts in this? If you have any doubts, you can ask. So how to write the whole circle bearing system and how to write the quadrantal bearing system of the survey lines? Whole circle bearing system always measured clockwise from the north direction, and we will not indicate any quadrants there, north south. We will not indicate any quadrants, we will indicate only the bearing, theta 1, theta 2, theta 3 or theta 4, because it is always measured from north direction only, correct? But in quadrantal bearing system, the bearing of the survey lines may be measured in clockwise or anti-clockwise direction and expressed as towards eastward or towards westward from north or south, correct? So in first quadrant it is north to east, you have to write. In second quadrant you have to write from south to east. In third quadrant you have to write from south to west. In fourth quadrant you have to write from north to west. Clear? So always you have to follow this pattern while expressing the bearing of the survey lines. Okay. So now, so if the bearing of the survey line is given in whole circle bearing system, we can convert into quadrantal bearing system, or if it is given in quadrantal bearing system, we can convert it into whole circle bearing system. So how? See here. So for line AB, how conversion of bearings from one system to other. So for line AB, refer this figure. For line AB, okay, the bearing will be from 0 to 90 degrees, correct? That will be in first quadrant. In second quadrant it will be 90 degree to 180 degrees, correct? From east to south, 90 degree to 180 degree. In third quadrant it will be 180 degree to 270 degrees. In fourth quadrant, if your line is there, the bearing varies from 270 degrees to 360 degrees. Clear? So if your survey line is in the first quadrant, the whole circle bearing will be from 0 degree to 90 degrees. If anywhere it can lie, correct? In between 0 degree to 90 degrees, anywhere it can lie, right? The same thing they have written it here. Line AB in the first quadrant means the whole circle bearing varies from 0 degree to 90 degrees. The second quadrant 90 degree to 180 degrees. In third quadrant the bearing varies from 180 degree to 270 degrees. In fourth quadrant the bearing varies from 270 degree to 360 degrees. So if it is given in whole circle bearing system, how to write that whole circle bearing system in terms of reduced bearing or quadrantal bearing system. How? If it is in the first quadrant, okay, if it is in the first quadrant, the reduced bearing system remains the same as whole circle bearing. Why? Because it is measured from north to east only. Okay, it remains same as whole circle bearing. What you have to write? North alpha east. Quadrant is northeast, first quadrant, right? If it is in the second quadrant, 180 degrees minus whole circle bearing, south beta east. Like that you have to convert from whole circle bearing to reduced bearing system. Or if it is given in reduced bearing system, we can also convert it into whole circle bearing system. That we will study now. Understood everyone? Any doubts in this up to here? Anyone confirm?
Yes, sir.
Any doubts in this? So I hope you have understood what do you mean by the bearings and what do you mean by the angle, and how to measure the bearings using two systems. One is whole circle bearing system and one is quadrantal bearing system. Okay, for both the systems we have different compass. Okay, for whole circle bearing system we have prismatic compass, and for quadrantal bearing system we have surveyor's compass. Okay, understood up to here? I hope you have understood everyone. So in the next class, we'll start with fore bearing and back bearing. How to measure the bearings from starting point to the end point or end point to the starting point. So for what we call it as fore bearing, and for what we call it as back bearing. That we will study in the next class. Okay. Okay. Thank you.